All right, everyone, there are lies, damn lies, and then the White House's malarkey. Because Biden, the other day, the White House put out a little infographic, a little pic, a meme, a self-satirizing one that's been heavily ratioed with regards to job creation, showing the average monthly job creation of every president since Reagan. And supposedly, we're supposed to believe that Biden is better on economic issues than Ronald Reagan or Bill Clinton. No reasonable person takes that seriously. And the first funny thing about this is it casts aspersion on Obama, his former boss, because it insinuates that both Clinton and Ronald Reagan were well ahead of him in average monthly job creation. Now, Ronald Reagan shares a trade. He's high up there too, with Biden, technically with latter stage Trump as well. A lot of the job creation was the restoration of post-recession jobs early under Ronald Reagan. Part of that was simply just due to they changed the guy in charge and consumer and business confidence rose. And so there was a reabsorption of some of that unemployment. Then it was morning in America again. Then you have another mini recession, and second term Reagan's, a 3 out of 10 in my book. First term Reagan was a 6. Did really well until he got demented and got co-opted by corporate interests and people that wanted to overthrow legitimately democratic regimes, by oddly enough funding socialist rebels. Anyway, Clinton, kind of the same thing. Certainly Obama. Obama's job creation, a lot of that early creation, all it was is the restoration of jobs lost during the Great Recession period. If we don't account for things that have nothing to do with anything that the sitting president did, and in some cases the former. For instance, COVID was made in China. Trump didn't make it, Biden didn't make it, although he was VP when the Obama admin helped fund it, but he didn't create it himself. Trump did not lose jobs month over month. In fact, if you were going to credit presidents with actual job creation, that is, time over time during their presidency, the creation of jobs that did not exist before, Donald Trump would be at the top of the list. He'd be better than Reagan, Clinton, or anyone else. Certainly ahead of Biden. Biden would still be technically in the negative territory because none of the jobs that he has created, he's claiming, it's like an average growth of 500,000 jobs a month. No, there's not. You have less jobs right now than you did before the pandemic began. When you fix for that unfortunate fact, and then you realize the president doesn't have much to do with it, it's state-level lockdowns that caused the job loss. It wasn't a virus. It wasn't an executive decision. It was a state-level decision. The states decided to fuck with small businesses, especially putting literally tens of millions of people temporarily out of work. When you fix for that, we still have a 15% less jobs than we did before the pandemic. That's not job creation. It's a restoration that offsets some of the loss you've already had. It's like the argument over what a deficit is. Let's say that you reduce the deficit. Well, the debt is still increasing. You're just decreasing the rate at which it increases. This is funny math, and people don't know the difference, and so there's no reason to even usually talk about it. There's a reason why we don't talk so much about the national debt anymore. People threw up their hands because they don't understand what it means. By the way, it's not as bad as you think because a lot of it's domestically held, and the biggest debt holder of the United States isn't China, it's actually Japan, a close ally. So don't worry too much about the national debt. Ours, unlike China's, is still manageable. Almost out of that realm, but for right now, we're not in the red so deep we can't bail our way out of it, potentially. Link in the description, by the way, if you want to see this funny fucking graphic. Again, the problem is this. The number two problem is this. The number two problem is that the only reason this was put out is because the last jobs report for December was so far below par. It was over 250,000 jobs less that were created than they expected. Unemployment managed to tick down, but labor force participation remains low. Unemployment was far lower still than it is now. It's still at a historically reasonably low level right now, minus the labor force participation problem. Trump got it lower. Trump got it down below, I think, 3.5. So you still got a ways to go, Joey, and the problem is, again, when we compare the numbers, you're not talking about any new job creation. Yeah, okay, some of them are new jobs technically, but they're just replacing jobs from industries that went kaput. A factory went out of business, so a new factory creates, the supply for the demand that's there, but that's not really job creation. That's just horizontal mobility. That's a horizontal change. It's not a vertical change. A vertical change would be a new factory is created because demand has increased beyond the capability of the factories that exist to supply it. Well, you're not seeing that. Things are changing hands and employees are changing fields or positions within fields, but it's not new. It's not new jobs. It's not new industries. There are some, but they're just offsetting losses that already occurred. You're talking, again, 15% reduction. You're talking about many millions and millions of jobs. Something like 3 or 4 million jobs, still unaccounted for. At the rate of current growth, even if the slowdown, because Biden, the reason why he says the average monthly job creation is because for the first few months, the Trump recovery, because of deregulation largely, was still happening. By the way, this has been said by other presidents. Whenever something went wrong in Obama's first term, he blamed Bush. Well, Biden, if he's succeeding, he should be crediting Trump then, I guess, supposedly. It's a Trump recovery, technically speaking. But it's not even really anything beyond a recovery. It's not creation. And so this is being used to cover up last month's job report and the month before that came in well below expected. Because for the last few months, for the latter half of the last year, the job creation has been considerably lower than it should have been. It was the first half of the year where it was higher. What happened in between the first and latter half of the year? More and more Biden programs kicked in. Re-regulation, his attempt to change the tax code, which lowered business and consumer confidence, shortages, etc., etc., etc. All of the things Biden has done wrong have stymied the regrowth of the economy, so that we're looking at a situation where we might be where we were before the pandemic, despite the additional population growth, despite the fact you have millions more Americans in the country, we'll have about as many jobs, positions filled, about the same unemployment as we did 2 years prior. Well, that's not good. That's not growth. He starts off with a zero-sum game sometime in the middle of this year, and that's if he's lucky. We've got multiple bubbles rising up in our faces ready to burst. We've got an unsure, totally unstable situation with both Russia and China, with bordering nations. We've got an uncertain future with regards to the U.S. energy industry. We've got sky-high gas prices. By the way, when gas prices rise, it incrementally raises the price of everything else. We've got high inflation. We've got low labor force participation, not abysmally low, but it's on the low side. It's certainly lower than it was before the pandemic. Part of that's Biden's fault by continuing the federal unemployment system the way it is. He's punted on student loans. The government has to absorb that interest cost month after month after month. We've been doing it for 2 years now. He's wrecking the economy. It's not going to get better, not under the current policies. The way to make the economy better is to effectively do a 180 on everything Biden's doing. We shouldn't be fiddling with it at all. Everything should be opened back up. Instead of advising states, well, you need to do this mandate and that mandate, and the only thing that he's sensible on is school closures, but he still wants kids to be in a bubble in order to go to school, which means why bother? You should homeschool at that point. We shouldn't be doing anything. Everything should be opened back up, and he should be advising that to happen. He should give up with the coronatarianism. By the way, I predict that it's not long after Omicron disappears, you'll get a wave of a disease that's so cold-like they won't even be able to keep up the panic anymore. At some point, something will have to give. Conveniently, it might happen before midterms. I'm sure Biden is waiting for the summer surge. He can blame it on DeSantis, which will backfire because it'll be so non-lethal, and then everyone will be resistant to the disease for some time. Be quite interesting. So this is a fabrication. He just doesn't want you to look at the last few months of job reports. He'd rather lump them in with the first few months where the Trump recovery was continuing in order to take credit for job creation that's not even technically creation at all, because he has no clue what he's doing. Economically, Joe Biden is arguably worse than Jimmy Carter. Only the structural integrity added to the economy by Donald Trump, and arguably by Clinton in some ways, only that kept us out of a goddamn depression and is maintaining our economy on life support despite Bidenomics. The only reason we're not in a goddamn depression right now is despite Joe Biden. That's about all. Peace out.